we go. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Carving It Up Live right here on Facebook, as well as the Carving It Up YouTube channel and the Grid Network YouTube channel. As always, I am Bryson Carver. Very excited to be with you on this Wednesday, and what a show we have. Listen, I'm about to light into the Philadelphia Eagles, their head coach, Nick Sirianni, the offensive coordinator, Kellen Moore, the quarterback, Jalen Hurts, for that disastrous debacle of a final 100 seconds plus of their loss the other night against the Atlanta Falcons, as well as, let's give Atlanta some credit, Kirk Cousins. Hey, props where it's due. Maybe he's turning a little bit of the corner in a certain regard. Discuss that in about 12 minutes. Also, for Carving Up the Context, I didn't really get a chance to touch on Monday's show. Figured it deserved its own segment today for Carving Up the Context. Bryce Young benched after only 18 starts, I believe, to start his NFL career, and I'm livid about it. I'll discuss why in 30 minutes, half hour, 30 minutes on the show. Bryson's Best 10, as much shakeup on this segment, and I started Bryson's Best 10 a season ago, top 10 teams in the NFL every Wednesday. There has never been this much shakeup in Bryce's Best 10. A lot of new teams, a lot of teams have come way down, shot way up. Listen, I'm sure there's not going to be much surprise who number one is, but 2 through 10, anybody's guess. That in about 45 to 50 minutes at the end of today's show. Jets, Patriots, my predictions for what's a really interesting AFC East Week 3 matchup between New England and New York at the end of today's show. Very, very excited about that. Already got some comments up in here. Patrick Brown, he says he's a big Cowboys fan. Happy Wednesday, everyone. I hope you're enjoying the nice weather. It's even better. The Eagles lost Monday night for Cowboys fans on the road to misery. LOSERS. Losers. That is what Cowboys fans have come up with. The retort to Philadelphia, and it is beautiful. Patrick also as well. New article, An Uncomfortable Conversations published, a perspective on Tua's recent concussion. More articles on deck as well. Be sure to check out Patrick's articles on the Grid's website. Does a great job. Definitely check him out. My man Jeff's in the comments. Sirianni and Big Dom, not going to like this one, but I sure as hell am. Oh, you better believe it, Jeff. But first, listen, I did not buy the Philadelphia Eagles coming into the season. I had them as around a 9-8 team and missing the playoffs entirely in the NFC. And the fact of the matter is, we're 2 games of the season. We got another 16 weeks and 15 games to go to really know for certain what this Eagles season is going to end up being. Here's what I do know for a fact, and this has nothing to do, the start of it at least, with the Philadelphia Eagles. You know, in football, it's so much like chess. Playing football is like chess, just like baseball, like other strategic games and sports. A lot of it is being 1 or 2 steps ahead of the opposition. But sometimes it doesn't have to be that complicated. Sometimes, when it comes to strategy, it can be as simple as, okay, I have an advantage. I have the upper hand over my opponent. Okay? What they want me to do. What do I think they want me to do here? I'm going to do the opposite. I'll never forget Game 6 of the 2020 World Series. I'll never forget this. Remember, that was the bubble year with the Dodgers and the Rays. I'll never forget this. Remember, Blake Snell, back when he was with the Tampa Bay Rays, was just dealing, had only given up 1 hit for Tampa Bay. And he was yanked after giving up, I think, a base hit or 2 or so in the 7th inning, if I remember correctly. And Mookie Betts turns around to Dave Roberts, the manager for the Dodgers, and kind of gives him a little wink, like, oh, we got him, Dave. We've got him. And the Dodgers go on to win that game and win the World Series. Oftentimes, strategy is about what the opposition wants you to do the opposite. Think of it this way. If the Philadelphia Eagles are in a position to win this football game, they at this point in the game lead by a score of 18-15 over the Atlanta Falcons at home, mind you. Atlanta has 0 timeouts. It's a 3rd down and 3. The time in this game is minute 46 seconds to go in the game. Okay? 3rd down and 3. Minute 46. Falcons have no timeout. Philly's down deep into the red zone. And they throw the football. Now, some may say, well, Bryson, come on. It was a perfectly designed play. They had run that play earlier on a previous touchdown drive. It was a play fake, and Jalen threw a great pass to Saquon Barkley, who they initially ruled he scored a touchdown. He didn't. They end up running a brotherly shove, I believe, the next play, score a touchdown. Fine. Here's the issue with that. Atlanta is on the ropes. Atlanta's been stacking the box. This whole argument, well, Atlanta was stacking the box, so it was a good play call. No, it wasn't. You've been gashing them all night long. The Philadelphia Eagles, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, average 5 yards a carry. And so in a 3rd down and 3 in that situation, the obvious thing to do, situational football means a lot to me, folks. This is why what Philadelphia did, as much as I hate the Eagles, drove me bananas. If you run the ball on third down, worst case scenario, they're going to stop. Saquon's been killing you all drive long. That's number one. Number two, it's worst case scenario. A 4th down and 1, you're going to probably call timeout. You're going to use one of your own timeouts. There's going to be about a minute 1 second left in the game. In that spot, it's going to be a 4th down and 1.5. I have a highly doubt the way that Saquon had been gashing Atlanta's defense that he would have been stopped for negative gain. Or negative loss, rather. So, with that said, 4th down and 1. What does everybody in the city of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and everybody watching that game on national television thinking? Here comes, tush push. They're going to push Jalen for a 1st down, and Philly's going to win it. And that's what they likely would have done and should have done. If they get a 1st down, great, game's over. If they get stopped, okay, then Atlanta's back inside their own 5-yard line, under a minute to go, no timeouts, needing a field goal to go 60 yards for the win. Instead, this shows you how bonkers this is. They decide to throw the ball on 3rd down. Well, Saquon should have caught the ball. Sure, but Saquon should have caught a lot of balls. Folks, I saw the stat. Saquon Barkley, 16 drops in his career since 2021, leads all running backs. So respect to Saquon, and he beat himself up after this game. I cost my team. I let my team down. Listen, that's respect to Saquon, and we understand that, but this is kind of what he's done. He struggled to catch the football in many occasions. Leads all running backs in drops in the last 3 to 4 seasons, right? So with that in mind, instead, you throw the ball on 3rd down. There's the percentage chance. Sure, it should have been caught by Saquon. Totally agree. It's a great pass by Jalen. Saquon would have caught that, got a 1st down. Should have. But because he dropped it, and because there's the probability, as I just gave you with Saquon's previous numbers, that he could drop the ball, all of a sudden you, A, give Atlanta 43 seconds that they would not have had otherwise, and B, you decide to kick the field goal on that 4th down, which is mind-boggling to me. You compile mistake on top of mistake to the point now, folks. Remember I just said a second ago, if Philadelphia had run the ball on 3rd down, stopped on 4th down, Atlanta's got under a minute to go 60 yards to get into field goal range. In this case, they have to go 70 yards, 10 yards more with 40 more seconds. It is inexcusable by Nick Sirianni. It's a disastrous play call by a guy that I've been very, very critical of. I feel like I've been one of the only folks who have done this in Kellen Moore. The fact that he decided to go with the play that's going to lead his guy out of bounds, his momentum carrying away from the line of scrimmage, away from the football, momentum carrying out of bounds. The reason that's a problem, it's a one replay. If Jalen Hurts, if Saquon in any event, say the Falcons read that perfectly. If Saquon Barkley is snuffed out, say there's a linebacker or a safety or somebody on him covering the play, Jalen has to either go down, which could have burned 40 seconds, or, we saw him throw a bad red zone interception against the Packers last week. Who knows what Jalen Hurts has to do? And kudos to Jalen until the last 30 seconds, which I'll get into in just a moment, did not throw the football to the other team, didn't make bad mistakes. He was great with his legs throughout the course of that game. I'm not sure that's something that can continue because, listen, knock on wood for Jalen, but we know he struggled with injuries. And playing the way Jalen plays, you're going to deal with injuries. We get that. They throw the ball, give the ball back to Kirk Cousins against a defense that is objectively terrible in Philadelphia going back to last season. And Atlanta, folks, that looked easy. 6 plays, 70 yards. Again, the aforementioned 70 yards to go get the touchdown. By the way, the touchdown that Kirk Cousins threw to Drake London for what ended up being for the win, 34 seconds left in the clock. Ladies and gentlemen, that play would have never existed if Philadelphia had run it on the other end, even if they had kicked the field goal, which they shouldn't have done on 4th down, by the way, just given the time and situation for Atlanta. They shouldn't have done that. Gave Atlanta the 40 seconds to get the touchdown. But nonetheless, okay, Atlanta kicks the extra point. They're up 1. How much time's left the game, you may ask? 34 seconds. And Philadelphia has some timeouts in their back pocket. So, it's especially with the new kickoff rule, the touchback taking him out to now, not the 25, but the 30. The fact that Jake Elliott has multiple 60-yard field goals on his resume, it's not all said and done for the Eagles. They can still win this game. Okay, so Jalen throws a pass to Dallas Goedert, completes it for a 1st down. Now you're at the Atlanta 43-yard line. You have one timeout left and 27 seconds. At the 43, what do you have to get for Jake Elliott? To give him a shot, 15 yards. To give him a good shot, 20 to 23 yards. Which, I mean, would have been a very makeable field goal given Jake Elliott's history. Kickers this year, by and large, have been great from 50 yards out. It's been unbelievable to watch. The kickers this year have been outstanding. Instead, Jalen, who, again, decision-making had been great all night, and I've questioned Jalen's decision-making, but he reverted back to his old bad traits and threw a pass to a deep ball to the left side into double coverage for what ended up being the game-ending interception. Jalen, it's first down, 27 seconds left, and a timeout at your own 43. You don't need to try a deep shot down the field. If it were like a fourth down or something and nothing's open, you just throw something up, hope there's a pass interference. Okay, fine. We understand that. It was a poor throw by Jalen. It was a poor decision by Jalen. And Philadelphia, this is not to take credit away from Atlanta. I'll get into the Falcons in a few minutes. Props to them. But this does not happen to go back to what I said. And we're about to show you some stats on the Eagles that are disturbing. Is the fact that in that spot, third down, minute 40 plus to go, other team has no timeouts. You run it, worst case scenario. And by the way, again, you run the football because the fact that Saquon has been, and your offensive line, your great offensive line, has been destroying Atlanta's front seven, has been mauling them, be able to create holes for Saquon to get 3 yards, 5 yards, kind of gash that defense, right? Worst case, you got a fourth down with a minute to go, and you're going to go for it. You're probably going to run the push Jalen for a first down. Even if you don't get it, Atlanta has the ball inside their own 5 with no timeouts left to go 10 yards, only 10 yards shorter than what ended up happening, where they had to go 10 more yards further with 40 extra seconds. It is, by the analytics, by clock management, by feel of the game and how it had been progressing to that point, it is inexcusable on every single front. By a Nick Sirianni coach team that, if you go back to last season, has not been good in these situations. All stats provided by StatMuse, all graphics provided by Alfred Parsar Jr. Here you go. When leading in the final 2 minutes, this is going back to week 15 last year. Big sample size. Record when leading in the final 2 minutes. The Philadelphia Eagles are 2-3. They win 40% of their games since week 15 last year when leading in the final 2 minutes. The rest of the league is 90-11. So for translation, folks, that means that every other team not named the Philadelphia Eagles, if they're up in the final 2 minutes, they've got about an 89% chance to win. Philadelphia has a 40% chance to win. Ladies and gentlemen, that is coaching. It is why I said at the end of last year, when Philadelphia was the worst team in football from week 13 on to the end of the year, on to that playoff loss to Tampa Bay. They were the worst team in football along with the Carolina Panthers. And it's progressed to this year. We can show you the numbers going back to week 13 last year. Worst records in the league. Panthers are the worst. Jaguars are tied with the Panthers. Commanders 1-6. Philadelphia Eagles, including the playoff loss to Tampa, are 2-7 since week 13 of last season. They've won 2 of their last 9 games. They're in a class with the Panthers, with the Jaguars, who have played poorly the last season and a half. Half season rather. Commanders, we know they're rebuilding, and the rebuilding Broncos and Tennessee Titans. It's a poorly coached team. And I saw after the game, Nick Sirianni didn't even speak to the team after the game. He's like, yeah, Jalen, you take it. And Jalen, respect him. I think Jalen's an excellent leader. I'd like Jalen to be a little bit more vocal, but I don't want to ask somebody to do something that's not them, that's not authentic to them. But when you're in a situation, yes, Jalen cost him at the end, and I ridiculed him for that. But the coach and the offensive coordinator cost this team a victory. The coach has to know my defense is not consistent in the last 2 minutes of games, and the fact we've been crushing them all game with the run game. By the numbers, by the film, by the feel of the game, Philadelphia blew this on every single front, and it's absolutely inexcusable. It is a fireable offense for Nick Sirianni. Full stop. This is not a good coach. It's a really talented roster, but we've seen, Philadelphia Eagles fans, y'all remember, what was it, the Dream Team, I think, in 2011? There was high expectations and all this, and they had a bad season, missed the playoffs. They may have went 7-9 or something. I mean, this team, this season, I think is going to kind of remind y'all a lot of that. Absolutely. I may sound like I'm overblowing this. It is as inexcusable a loss as I've ever seen in my life watching a football game. It's that bad. So, I mean, just disastrous for the Philadelphia Eagles. Disastrous on every front. Let's see what we got. I feel like I was about to blow a gasket there, but I'll get to the comments. I hate bad situational football. It drives me insane. It's one of the reasons I love college football. I love college football. That it's why I prefer the NFL more, because coaches tend to be much better in terms of late game situational, clock management, game management, all of that than college. They just are. That's why most college coaches, with the exception of, Jimmy Johnson, Jim Harbaugh, guys like that, tend to not work in the NFL. And I mean, that's as bad as it gets. Patrick Moore, referring to Kellen Moore, arrived right on cue. Very predictable. No question about that. Let's see what we got. Grady, my man Grady, what's up, my man? He says, first of all, hello, Bryson. Going to do a better job of tuning in to you, my good friend. I appreciate that, Grady. Listen, you don't have to prove yourself by, watch the show. Listen, Grady's a great guy. He's been supporting the show for years, and he's a dear friend of mine, so shout out to him. He says, here's why I would say the Eagles, who are 1-1. The sky isn't falling. Let's see how they bounce back. Agreed. I'm not saying this means that they're going to miss the playoffs. I think they're going to miss the playoffs. I do. But if you're going to turn around the bad, I mean, we saw the articles. I covered it on my show where, was it Jeremy Fowler? I think it was Jeremy Fowler on ESPN, and him and somebody else, I forget who it was, I apologize, but wrote the piece about Philadelphia where it was very obvious that there's a friction, there's a disconnect between the coach and the quarterback. And again, folks were like, well, Brady and Belichick weren't friends, but they had deep respect for the other's football intellect. Like Tom and Bill, maybe up until that last season when it kind of, came apart in 2019. Other than that, I don't think Tom Brady or Bill Belichick were ever like, man, this guy didn't know what the heck he's doing. He's got no clue. And it's seriously thought about that. I think Philadelphia with Hurts and Sirianni do. More on Hurts in terms of what he thinks about his coach. Because listen, we remember in that Super Bowl against the Chiefs when Nick Sirianni was challenging a play against the Chiefs and Sirianni, the guy in his 40s, is out here, first down, baby. And the quarterback who's 24, 25 years old, who, in theory, by the numbers should be, I guess, more immature, is like, coach, put your arm down, bro. What are you doing? They're very different types of dudes. And listen, I have my questions about Jalen, but I think he can be. We saw when he was with Shane Steichen, the guy almost won the league MVP if he hadn't gotten hurt. With good coach, again, Hurts is one of those guys who's more reliant on coaching than natural ability. We know he can run the football, but he's a very inconsistent thrower of the football. He needs great coaching, and Philadelphia simply does not have that. His head coach or his offensive coordinator, they don't have it. And by the way, how good of a game is this? Philadelphia at New Orleans next week. That's it. That's in New Orleans, by the way. The Saints right now are 2.5-point favorites. We'll see if that line moves throughout the week. That is a really interesting game. Really interesting game. Okay. I don't know if I agree with this, Grady, but I see where you're coming from. He says, I'll say this. If they can't get their stuff together this year, Bill Belichick is the perfect fit for Philadelphia. So I don't think he'd be the perfect fit because to me, there's a big question on Belichick. There's a big question on him. Is he going to go into Philadelphia and want to control things? Because that's Howie Roseman. Howie Roseman controls everything in the Eagles front office. Looks like we're dealing with some connection issues. Hopefully we can get back going the right way. Howie Roseman controls Philadelphia's personnel. Because the reports come out of Atlanta, because that was the job that Belichick came closest to landing, was the Atlanta Falcons job before they moved on to Raheem Morris, Belichick just wants to control everything. And respectfully to Bill, as great of a coach as he is, he's a disastrous general manager. Look at his last 7 drafts in New England. They were, miss after miss. His last draft in New England, it was 2 guards and a kicker. It was what are you doing? So it just, if he's strictly coaching Grady and he puts together a good staff, because his staff's at the end of New England, it was a lot of hiring his sons, hiring former Patriot assistants like Bill O'Brien, who's a defensive coordinator who became the offensive coordinator. I'm forgetting his name. I forgot the guy's name. Matt Patricia. That was Matt Patricia. Hiring a lot of former Patriots guys and his sons. If that's the case, then I don't see Philadelphia going much further than they do. Now, if it were me, Grady, I'd hire a Belichick protege. I'd hire Mike Vrabel. That's who I would hire. because he has a history. Vrabel can put together good staffs. Vrabel's won more recently than Belichick, or won in the regular season and won the playoffs more recently than Bill Belichick has. That would be my first choice for a lot of teams, is Mike Vrabel. I think that if I were the Cowboys, that'd be my first choice. Now, I don't know if Vrabel and Jerry would necessarily vibe. That's the question, but Vrabel will be my first call. And this head coaching market could look really, really, there's going to be a lot of big names. Maybe Pete Carroll, who knows? Maybe he'll throw his name back in the ring. We'll see. He didn't sound like he really wanted to be, moved on from with the Seahawks. So, Ben Johnson, the kid Kubiak with the Saints. Holy cow. The guy's, he's from the Shanahan tree. It looks like he's the head meister of the best offense in the league through the first two games. That wouldn't be the worst move of the world. And listen, all great coordinators aren't great coaches. See Arthur Smith. Arthur Smith and my Steelers, great OC, terrible head coach. So there you go. Let's see what we got. Let's see. Yeah, a good point here by Patrick. If we can pull up his comment. Coach Pencil, talking about Matt Patricia, and that is an apt name because he's got the little pencil on his ear, the number 2 pencil. Coach Pencil was on Philly's staff last season as a defensive advisor. Yeah, and they basically promoted him to defensive coordinator, and the Eagles' defense actually got worse at the end of the year. But wait, listen, he was the defensive coordinator in New England. We know Belichick ran that. Like, we know Belichick controlled the defense. So there you go. On the Atlanta side of things, though, I was really impressed by Kirk Cousins. So if you look at Kirk Cousins' numbers in week 2, the passer rating is insane. The passer rating for Kirk Cousins. So he has a 149 passer rating. I'm sorry, my bad. Way off. 117 passer rating. I don't know where I saw 149. 20 of 29, good completion percentage, 241, 2 touchdowns. QBR 0 to 100 of 75. Did not turn the football over in this game. So this was a gigantic win for the Atlanta Falcons because if you look at their next 3 games, Atlanta, they got a home game next week on Sunday Night Football against the back-to-back champ Chiefs, so that's going to be a tough challenge. They got a home game against the Saints. That'll be a fun one. And then they got a home game against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. If the Falcons can somehow get out of that, find a way somehow to get out of that 2-1, like that to me says, Atlanta may win 12 games this year. Like that's because then after that, at the Panthers, Seattle's a tough game, at Tampa Bay, at Dallas, at Saints. But they got some Broncos in here. You got some Vegas Raiders, the Giants, Commanders, Panthers. So like the last 4 games or so, potentially 5, we'll see what Minnesota is. Like that's where Atlanta's going to do the bulk of their damage this regular season. It's just kind of surviving this week 3 to week 14 stretch of the season, week 13, 14 stretch of the season. Here's why I was impressed by Kirk Cousins. So the big knock on Kirk, or one of the big knocks, has been, okay, not only does the guy not win in primetime, the guy didn't win on Monday Night Football. Well, he's won his last 2 games on Monday Night Football. Go back to last year. Remember that game was probably the best game Kirk played all last season. It was actually the game that until Kirk Cousins went down, I think the very next week, folks were like, hey, is Kirk Cousins like a sneaky MVP candidate? Remember we played the San Francisco 49ers. That's when the Niners, they come off a loss to Cleveland, but the Niners were riding high. Folks like myself still believe they were the best team in the league at that point. And Kirk, with no Justin Jefferson, absolutely cooked their defense. I remember watching that game. I'm like, God, and that was like the big Jordan Addison come out to play game. Like, there's no Justin Jefferson, best receiver in the game. Minnesota's had an odd first part of the season. Niners are riding high, and you cooked them. Now, it ended up being a close game because the Niners offense, were doing what they were supposed to do to keep it close. But that was a big win for Kirk. And then last night, defense gave him a shot. Now, again, some of this is Philadelphia has a bad defense going back to last season. But Kirk diced up this defense. And by the way, as well, for the first time, Dalvin Cook was really good in Minnesota, but for the first time, I feel like Kirk has not just a running game, but maybe a top 3 running back in the National Football League in Bijan Robinson. So Bijan Robinson, you look at what he did the other night. The numbers aren't staggering. 14 carries for 97. Now he averaged almost 7 yards a carry. This kid, he's in year 2. He's the first part of his second year in the NFL. We understand that. What he can do running the football is like there's certain things you can't teach. He has a shiftiness to him. He's very good at getting in between the tackles. It's very hard to bring down, a lot of yards after contact. This is what I liked about this Atlanta Falcons team. And listen, this NFC South appears to be, we're only 2 games in, but maybe a lot better than we thought it'd be. The Panthers I'll get to Bryce Young in a second, but the Panthers. Tampa Bay, they haven't slowed down. Baker's still balling. Baker, touchdown maker. The Saints look like nobody can stop them. They've scored, I think, on every single drive this season. And they got Atlanta, who's, I think, got the best roster in that division and arguably a top 5 roster in the league when you talk about a proven guy in Kirk who looked far more comfortable against Philadelphia than he did against Pittsburgh. And again, a lot of that is Pittsburgh. I may sound like a biased Steelers fan, but it's just the truth. Pittsburgh has a way better defense than Philadelphia does. But that was also I said coming into that game that I thought my Steelers would win because the institutional, knowledge and the culture of Mike Tomlin and the Steelers and defense, they were going to just win that game based on that. Whereas Atlanta, it's the first game for Kirk and Raheem Morris. I'm trying to get things worked out. That game played right into Pittsburgh's hands, and that's why we won. But in this situation, there's a lot of adversity. You're on the road. Kirk has struggled historically in the city of Philadelphia in his career. But the defense gave him a shot. He's got some great weapons with him. Kyle Pitts, who, again, needs to kind of step up a little bit, but did make some catches in this game. Kyle Pitts, Drake London caught the walk-off, not the walk-off, but the game-winning touchdown. Darnell Mooney caught a touchdown. He looked pretty good. And he got Bijan Robinson. So the weapons in Atlanta are good. We know their defense is really talented with Jesse Bates, Justin Simmons, Matthew Judon. They got some dudes on that defense. So, listen, this next, 3-month stretch, 2.5-month really stretch for Atlanta is really crucial in order for them to put themselves in a position where they can win the NFC South and put themselves in as high a seeding as they possibly can. But as we sit here right now, like that is again, call me a biased Steelers fan, but I feel like they were kind of supposed to lose that game just given the situation and trying to kind of establish themselves. Whereas Pittsburgh, like them or not, they know what they are. For them to go into Philadelphia, listen, Philadelphia killed themselves. I already said that in the first segment. But you got to take advantage of them giving you those opportunities, and that's what great teams do. It's what I said about the Kansas City Chiefs in their game against Cincinnati. Like the Bengals outplayed them throughout, but if you give them that little crease, Kansas City will take advantage because they always do. For Atlanta to do the same to Philadelphia, very impressed. We can talk about their roster. We can talk about their talent. We can talk about the fact that Kirk Cousins is the best QB that they've had since Matt Ryan circa 2017-18. But you got to make it happen. You got to be able to put those pieces together. And that is a locker room win for Atlanta. That is a momentum win for Atlanta. And that Sunday night game against the Chiefs, like that's a big-time test for the Falcons. And Kansas City, by the way, is a 3.5-point favorite in that game. I'm not surprised there. But big games coming up. Chiefs at home, Saints at home, Bucks at home. If you can find a way to somehow get out of that 2-1, and they're in a situation right now, I guess at that point, that put them with a 4-2 record moving forward, given how light the last part of their season is. Raiders, Giants, Commanders, Panthers. Got to feel really good if you're a Falcons fan right now. That was a very big win. I was very impressed by Kirk Cousins in that game. Let's see what we got. Yeah, Patrick, you said it right. Kirk chains. Did Kirk wear a chain, by the way, last night or the other night? I didn't see. Did he put the chain on? Because he was dripping back when he was in Minnesota and he put the chain on and on the plane. It was great. He should. I mean, come on. It's especially if he can do that in Minnesota. You're telling me he can't do that in Atlanta? You got to make it happen, Kirk Cousins. Come on. But yeah, you're right, Patrick. He did something nobody thought, and that's win a Monday Night Football game. So yeah, kudos to him. And that was, I picked Atlanta to win this one, ironically, by a single point, which is what they did. But impressed by what Kirk did in that last drive. Yeah, Grady's talking about my previous suggestion about Mike Vrabel. Talking about that might be a better fit. Again, the thing with Belichick, listen, nobody in their right mind is going to criticize Bill Belichick's, football IQ, football knowledge. Nobody with a brain would question that. The issue with Bill is not only do I have questions about whether he's evolved to today's NFL, being a quarterback-centric league. It's the very reason the Patriots moved off of Tom Brady, despite, he blamed Bill did, for the Patriots kind of floundering down the stretch of 2019, and Tom didn't have statistically even close to his best year. But I remember saying on my show 5 years ago at that point, do you see what's around Tom Brady right now? This is a terrible receiving core. Give him something to work with. Bill thought it was Tom, and he was getting older. Went coast to Tampa Bay with weapons, and he has more weapons. At that point, Antonio Brown and Leonard Fournette and Gronk, they'll win the Super Bowl. So, and they already had Mike Evans, Chris Godwin. So, that's whether he's evolved to the modern NFL, A, and B, if he's willing to relinquish a little bit of power. If he's able in this stretch right now, where he's broadcasting. He's on Inside the NFL and the Manning Cast. I think he might be with Jim Gray right now doing the Let's Go podcast now that Tom Brady is broadcasting for Fox. In this kind of self-reflection point in his career, in his life, you'll wonder if he's able to evolve here. Maybe his best friend in the whole world, certainly in the coaching business, Nick Saban did. Nick Saban evolved to NIL. Nick Saban, one of the great, most impressive I've ever been with Nick Saban, is that the first part of his career at Alabama and prior, obviously, at LSU, college football was all about, do you have the running back? Do you have the defense? Well, that plays right into Nick Saban. That's his strength right there, is punching you in the mouth. Nobody will be more physical than Alabama. But once the game started to shift to, hey, you also need to have a really top-end quarterback too. He's like, okay, I'll do that. I'll go get Jalen Hurts and Tua and Mac Jones, and I'll go get Bryce Young. Like, being able to adjust and adapt to the modern NFL, that's the question. Again, we don't have evidence to say Belichick has done that before, but he's got a year off. You know, he's got some time to again, self-reflect, and if he's able to do that, then yeah, I think he'd be a great fit with Philadelphia or whoever needs him, and being able to put together a great staff. That's going to be the question as well for Belichick and his future destination. Grady, Sam Darnold may be the second coming of Case Keenum for the Vikings. There are similarities, although I do think Darnold, from a pure arms talent standpoint, is more talented than Case. But listen, well, it's funny you mentioned Sam Darnold, Grady, because I'm actually about to get into him sort of in my next segment. But we'll be back in a minute, carving up the context right after the break. Welcome back to Carving It Up Live. One of my favorite segments to do every week is Carving Up the Context. It's a segment I do every week where there's a big story, going around, and there's a lot of analysis of it, and people are trying to break it down. Why did this happen? How did this happen? What does this mean? And I try and look a little bit deeper than surface level. That's why we call it Carving Up the Context. We should get a shovel. Maybe use a prop. Get a shovel. We're carving, or not a shovel. We need to get maybe a wood carver in studio to carve up. You get the picture. Carving Up the Context starts right now as the head coach of the Colorado Buffaloes, primetime Deion Sanders says, "Give me my theme music." On this week's edition of Carving Up the Context, we're going to talk about Bryce Young, former number 1 overall pick in 2023 by the Carolina Panthers, who was benched after only 18 career starts after being the first overall pick only a year and a half ago by the Carolina Panthers. So, by the way, Andy Dalton's going to start in his place. I remember during that draft process, it was this conversation, it was back and forth. Is it Bryce Young? Is it C.J. Stroud? Who should the Carolina Panthers take, given the fact that they given up the moon and everything? Like, they were like Gru from Despicable Me. They took the moon and everything else to get the first overall pick in that draft, trading with the Chicago Bears, who I think it's safe to say they won that trade big time. Is the fact who they go, Stroud, Bryce, what do we do here? And I remember saying at that time, I thought they should go Stroud. I thought Stroud was the best prospect. I thought my man Hendon Hooker, who ended up going to Detroit, and I promise he will show up once Goff is, moved on from. And I like Jared Goff, by the way. Hendon Hooker will be the guy. That's number 2. Number 3 will be Bryce Young. Bryce Young will be the 3rd best prospect in this upcoming draft. And there were size concerns. We know that. We've seen that in the 2 games this season and 16 a season ago with the Panthers. There was some physical limitations that the Panthers were going to have to work around and build around. More on that in just a second. There were limitations to Bryce. But I thought at Alabama, he saw the field well, he moved well, He was deadly accurate, and we understand accurate in college, accurate in the NFL. Those are two different things. I mean, Tim Tebow's completion percentage, I don't think it was that bad in college at Florida. In the NFL, it was like barely 50%. So it's a different game almost when you go to the next level. We understand that. And I never thought Bryce was this special all-world talent that some folks perceived him to be when he did go number one to the Carolina Panthers. Here's the issue. This is organizational malpractice by the Carolina Panthers with Bryce Young. When you take, and this, it's a mistake a lot of franchises make. None have done so more than Carolina has, and here's why. When you draft a guy, it doesn't even have to be number one, but when you draft a guy in the top 10, the first round of the draft, that first year, in most cases, again, the Bears to me were the exception because of a trade. We'll see what happens with Caleb this year. By and large, if you get the first pick of the draft or top 5 pick, you probably weren't a very good football team. You needed a quarterback. If you take him that first year, the roster kind of is what it is. You work with what you got, whatever coach you have, whatever the case may be. You see what you got in Bryce Young. You see what he's able to give you. And last year, it wasn't much. Bryce Young, it was 2-14, a 2-14 record. His first year in the league, 11 touchdowns, 10 picks, had a passer rating below average of 73, only 2,877 passing yards. Didn't even complete 60% of his passes. He wasn't that very good. He had a couple wins here and there. I think they actually beat C.J. Stroud and the Texans, ironically, last year in one of their 2 wins, Bryce Young's first career victory in the NFL. But there were some moments here. They're like, okay, I like what I'm seeing from Bryce. I remember there was a game, they almost beat the darn Packers when Green Bay went on that streak to get into the playoffs as the 7th seed in the NFC. Like, there were little moments you're like, okay, there's something there. But by and large, it wasn't very good. And the first 2 games of this year has been nothing short of an unmitigated mess. 0 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, completed 55% of his throws, and his passer rating, this is hard to believe, is 44 through the first 2 games. Now, of course, a lot of that is on Bryce. But when you take a guy high in the draft, it is an organizational responsibility. If you're investing that much into this guy to start his career, especially giving up what you gave up for him in that trade with Chicago, it is your organizational duty to put the talent around him to be the guy. To make 100% sure, is he the guy? Now, what do we know about the Carolina Panthers? What do we know, if you take Bryce Young out of the picture, what do we know the Panthers biggest weakness coming out of last season? Like, there was a lot of weaknesses. The roster wasn't very good. What was their biggest issue? They can't protect anybody. Like, I'm not sure Mahomes could have had a great season last year with the Carolina Panthers. Heck, he barely did. I shouldn't say barely, but Mahomes' regular season numbers with the Chiefs weren't exactly eye-popping last year. I don't think Mahomes would have been that good with the Panthers a season ago, given the roster that they had. So Bryce Young doesn't stand a chance. So the offensive line isn't very good. So what do the Carolina Panthers do in this year's draft? What do they decide to do with their picks? They go receiver, Xavier Leggetti. Okay, you help Bryce Young, give him a guy on the outside. Jonathan Brooks out of Texas. Okay, that's not an O-lineman. Then they go linebacker, tight end, corner, defensive tackle, linebacker throughout the rest of that 2024 draft. You have the smallest quarterback in the league. The Panthers receiving core, it's not going to blow anybody's socks off. It's Xavier Leggetti. They got the kid at LSU last year in the draft, Adam Thielen. They got some guys who can, under the right scheme, who can separate on an occasional basis. It don't mean jack if you can't protect Bryce Young. It's the fact that you give up all this for Bryce. See what you got in year 1. Put the talent around him in year 2. Well, Bryson, come on. Some of this has got to fall on Bryce Young. Yes. But a case can be made that it could have easily fallen on 2 other former Carolina Panthers quarterbacks who, as we see here today, are 2-0. Their teams are respectively both 2-0. Can we see what Baker Mayfield and Sam Darnold did with the Carolina Panthers combined? Let's show their numbers right here. 22 touchdowns. This is Baker and Darnold with the Panthers combined. 22 touchdowns, 19 interceptions, 58% completion, 79 passer rating, and they had a record of 9-14. Keep in mind, the Panthers actually had some okay players at that point in 2021 and 2022. They were like 7-8 win teams. They were fine. But Darnold was meh, and Baker, that was some of the worst football he's ever played in his life with the Carolina Panthers. Well, let's see what Baker and Darnold have done since leaving Carolina. Oh, they've been excellent. 46 touchdowns, 14 picks, completing 67% of their throws, passer rating of 100, and a 13-9 record. You got Baker, who's like, we're 2 games in, but is an early MVP candidate for crying out loud with the Buccaneers, and Darnold, where it's like, hey, this is like the Sam Darnold redemption story with the Minnesota Vikings. Now, we understand that those rosters in Tampa Bay and Minnesota are significantly better than those in Carolina. But not only so are the coaching, but so is the organizational structure. And this goes back, I'm sure my man Grady is in the comments right now. He's a diehard Panthers fan, and he told me this from the jump. He was 100% right. The ownership in Carolina, David Tepper, is why we're sitting here talking about this today. David Tepper, since taking over the Carolina Panthers after the Richardson situation scandal, we understand what that happened with that, has run this organization into the ground in epic fashion and has the audacity. There was a game last year, the Panthers lost to the Jaguars. That was actually the last time the Jaguars won. Ironically, my man Trevor didn't play, but they won because they were playing the darn Panthers. Late in that blowout victory by Jacksonville, somebody said something to David Tepper, the billionaire owner of an NFL franchise, and he responded by throwing a beer on them. That shows his emotional maturity. During the draft, after night 1, it was a rough night for the Panthers, given the situation they put themselves in, not taking an offensive lineman, mismanaging some trades here or there. David Tepper walks into a little, I guess, local diner or something in Charlotte, North Carolina, walks into the building. There's a Carolina Panthers fan wearing a cap, a baseball cap, basically kind of criticizing, or not criticizing him, but the fact that outside of the little diner was a little chalkboard sign, whatever, that said, I think it was like, let the GMs draft or something like that, or let the fans draft. Basically, David Tepper, we don't want you making the picks, because all reports out of Carolina say that he and his wife have all say over the draft picks in Charlotte. David Tepper walks into that diner, has the audacity, takes the hat off of this guy at the front desk of the restaurant. That's what he is. He does not have the temperament to be an NFL owner. He's, to be frank, a jerk. His football decision-making folk. Bryce Young has had 3 head coaches in 18 games. So every 6th game, on average, every 6th game, Bryce Young is a new coach. That's unacceptable. It is, again, I'm not saying Bryce Young can be a generational talent. I'm not saying that at all, but I don't think he's that bad. I refuse to believe that the guy at Alabama who won a Heisman Trophy and was excellent in his second year there as a starter with the Crimson Tide, I refuse to believe that guy all of a sudden, odd coincidence, just so happened to go to the worst managed NFL team with the worst roster, and oh, shocker, he's not very good. I think Bryce Young can be somewhere in that low-end starter, high-end backup, like the Gardner Minshew category, to the okay starter, like best case. Like if he hit his ceiling, I think he'd be Tua. Like Bryce Young is not leading you to any championships. We understand that. He's not this bad. Darnold wasn't this bad. Darnold was with the Panthers. He's excellent with the Vikings. Baker Mayfield was terrible. Terrible with the Panthers. I wrote Baker Mayfield off 2 years ago. He's gone to Tampa Bay. By the way, he went to the Rams for a cup of coffee before that. Then went to Tampa Bay, led a team to the playoffs with Tom Brady's roster, and is unbelievable through the first 2 games of this year. Maybe, just maybe, it has something to do with the fact that David Tepper does not know how to pick talent, because he shouldn't be picking talent. He's the owner. If I get on Jerry Jones, who, by the way, I've criticized Jerry. Jerry's much better at this than Tepper is. The owner shouldn't be making the picks, and the owner does not know how to hire and fire a new head coach and bring in the certain decision makers in the organization to put Bryce Young in the best position possible. If you're going to mortgage the farm for a player like that, a player that physically limited, buddy, you got to go all out and put as much around him as you possibly can. Be active in the trade market. Draft, maybe, here's an idea. You got the worst offensive line in the league. Maybe you should draft an offensive lineman in the first round. I mean, the Chargers don't even need an offensive lineman, or didn't need an offensive lineman. They're like, yeah, we'll take Joe Alt. He's like 6'10" or whatever. He's a monster. He fits what we want to do. Let's take Joe Alt. And Joe Alt's been awesome. Like, that is because the Chargers are trying to form an identity. A lot of these teams in the NFL are trying to form an identity, or draft around their already set identity, like the Steelers or the Chiefs or San Francisco. Meanwhile, Carolina Panthers is just throwing stuff at the wall and seeing if it sticks. So, again, I don't think Bryce is special. I have said that over and over and over and over on this show. He's not as bad as what you see right now in Carolina. I do not believe that. Darnold wasn't very good. Baker wasn't very good. Both have been excellent since leaving the Panthers. Since going to smart coaches with good rosters. I mean, again, I like Minnesota's roster a lot. Same with Tampa. I don't think they're the Niners. I don't think they're the Detroit Lions or something. I rest my case. For this week's edition of Carving Out the Context, Bryce Young got screwed over in every sense of the word. Not in the sense of how he was playing, but with the organization that refused to even attempt to put anything around him for him to be successful. Excuse me. Looks like we got a lot of comments in here. What do we got? My man, again, Andy Dalton is starting. My man Alfred is in the comments. Alfred did a great job once again with the graphics. Shout out to you, my man. He says, Carolina should learn from the Jets. We worked with Zach Wilson until we couldn't anymore. Sure, but again, I think a lot of this does fall on the Panthers. Let's see. Okay, Grady. And he's a Panthers fan, so again, his opinion does hold weight here. Bryce Young can't play. He's just too small to play in the National Football League. Is he a broken player? Yes, but his game just doesn't translate. He was surrounded by all these amazing players at Bama. You simply don't take a quarterback who's 5'9" with no running ability because Bryce cannot run. He's not very athletic. He's a pocket passer. I challenge anyone to watch the games. He is flat out missing throws when he's got time. Again, I don't disagree with a single thing that you just said right there, Grady. I mean, there was a play on Sunday against the Chargers who went viral on social media where Bryce, for the first time in a while, did have a little bit of time to throw. He's looking. There's nothing there. Then just throw the ball out of bounds. If there's no running lane, if there's no one to go to, throw the ball out of bounds. Let's live to see another play. But instead, he rolled to his left, tried to make something happen, tried to avoid some guys. And again, he's not as athletically gifted as another quarterback his size, Kyler Murray. So again, but if nothing else, okay, again, if nothing else, why did he take CJ Stroud? And by the way, I want to be fully clear on this. Stroud was then and certainly is now the better prospect. More size, better arm strength, more mobile. I liked Stroud then, and I certainly like Stroud infinitely more now. Stroud's a clear-cut top 10 quarterback pushing to be top 5. With that said, the Texans have gone all out on supporting him with talent. They're not paying him much. We're going to go all out. We're going to draft him. Nico Collins is already there. We're going to go get Stephon Diggs. We're going to go get Joe Mixon. We're going to invest in the defense. Our coach, D'Amico Ryans, is going to institute a culture into this franchise. And it's been the exact opposite in Carolina. Like if you swapped Carolina's quarterbacks and Houston's quarterback, put Stroud in Charlotte, put Bryce Young in Houston, is CJ Stroud, are we getting the bust? Now, does Stroud play as bad as Bryce? No, because Stroud's more physically gifted than Bryce. I don't think the Panthers are sniffing the playoffs in the NFC. I don't. As talented as Stroud is. So, I mean, we have recent data on this. Again, we can't really know about Bryce until he goes to a smart franchise. If he goes somewhere to be somebody's backup, God forbid, knock on wood, somebody goes down, and he steps in and plays well then that might be the latest example, like a Sam Darnold, like a Baker Mayfield, that, it was the Panthers who were the problem. I'll say this, is that franchise is not going anywhere as long as David Tepper's is the owner. And by the way, I actually like Canales. I think Canales is a really smart coach. He worked with Geno in Seattle, worked with Baker in Tampa. I think he does a really good job in his previous stops. He doesn't have much to work with here, be it the quarterback position, be it anywhere else. The Panthers' defensive line, now they've gotten the injury bug early in the season, but generally they've been solid. That's about where it ends. So I probably won't be doing a ton of Carolina Panthers topics the rest of the season because they're a pretty bad football team, but I just, again, it feels like, it may sound like I'm talking out of two sides of my mouth, but it is a truth that I've said on the show, but I haven't done a good enough job of following it. Like, it's like the classic, do as I say, not as I do. I need to do a better job of this at following what is a general rule in the NFL. For the overwhelming majority of quarterbacks, where you go will dictate your success. The overwhelming majority. Now, you can have, Andrew Luck. He's a prime example. He's the number 1 pick out of Stanford. The Colts were a tire fire after they let Peyton Manning go, the neck surgeries, all that. He took that well below average roster. It was like a bottom 8 roster in the league to the playoffs in his rookie year. Like that, those are rare instances. Doesn't happen very much. So there you go. I mean, Peyton Manning, year 2 at the Colts, took Indianapolis to not even the playoffs, but to like a 13-3 record, I think, in year 2 in 1999. So that's where you go matters. But the overall majority of quarterbacks, that tends to be the case. And Bryce simply does, we know this, does not fall in the category of Andrew Luck or Peyton Manning. So there you go. All right. So another segment we do every Wednesday is called Bryson's Best 10. It's a segment during the NFL season, which is when I'll be honest with y'all, really enjoy doing the segment, is I rate my top 10 teams in the National Football League from 10 to 1. What do we got? Who are the best 10 teams in the NFL going into that particular week? Well, it's week 3, so let's rank them. Bryce's Best 10 teams in the National Football League headed into week 3. Here we go. Number 10, the 10th best team in the National Football League. Welcome to the list, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Bucs are the 10th best team in the National Football League, and here is why. Baker Mayfield has been balling over the first 2 games of the season. So 4 touchdowns in week 1 against the Commanders, a touchdown through the air and on the ground, including a career-high 11-yard rushing touchdown on the road against the Detroit Lions. By the way, in that game against the Lions, holding that very explosive Detroit offense to 16 points at home. That is very, very difficult to do. The Lions are almost never held in the teens in their own home building. Todd Bowles, we know, is an excellent defensive coach. Did a solid job. He's probably the best coach the Jets have had in years. If you look back at recent history, Baker's been successful there. Again, I talked about him in the previous segment. This new change of scenery. He's got a great rapport with Chris Godwin. That works. We know what Mike Evans is, what he brings to the table. I need to see more out of this Buccaneers run game over the course of an entire season. If they can get that working, hey, this can be a very dangerous playoff team in the NFC. So first spot, first time making the list. Welcome to Bryce's Best 10 Tampa Bay Buccaneers. At number 9, they actually move up a spot from last week, despite not having won a single game. It is the Cincinnati Bengals. The Bengals are the 9th best team in the National Football League, and here's why. So listen, again, I'm really adamant about this list not being beholden to the standings. Like, I love my Steelers. We're 2-0. Best record in the league, right? Not in the list. Cincinnati's 0-2. They go on the road. They humiliating loss at home to the New England Patriots with far less, despite having the talent advantage. They go on the road to Kansas City. No T. Higgins, missing a lot of guys. O-line did a good job. Joe Burrow outplayed Mahomes over the course of that game, except in the final 3 minutes or so. Listen, Jamar Chase, we know he can bring to the table. This Bengals defense, I think, is really good. Lou Anarumo is one of the better defensive coordinators in the league. Zach Taylor is kind of like, well, he doesn't screw it up. He doesn't make mistakes, so he's doing something right. Listen, to go on the road, they match up well against the Kansas City Chiefs. I think they're going to turn their season around this coming Monday night against the Commanders and get things going. Cincinnati has a lot of winnable games on their stretch. Being a last-place team, isn't that unbelievable? Bengals going to be fine this year. They got the second-best QB in the game. Once they get T. Higgins back, that'll be as explosive an offense as there is in the NFL. And listen, thank God my Steelers have built 2 games of an edge over the Bengals, because they may run us down. Very good chance, chance they will, to win the AFC North. The Bengals, despite the loss, I still buy them as the 9th best team in the National Football League. At number 8, making their debut on Bryce's Best 10, welcome Atlanta Falcons. The Falcons are the 8th best team in the National Football League, and here is why. So Atlanta, over the course of their first 2 games, only giving up about 15 points per game. Do the quick math. I believe about 19 points per game on this new NFL season. It's a team that can really do some damage on the offensive side of the ball. Again, Kirk Cousins in that first game against my Steelers, right? Like I said, that was an institutional win by my Steelers. It was very much, again, we know the culture, who Mike Tomlin is, the offensive game plan, Arthur Smith, revenge game against his old team, knowing their personnel. Kirk Cousins, albeit against a bad Eagles defense, was able to kind of get his feet set, feel out the situation, what he wanted to do. Atlanta's offensive line has looked outstanding, particularly last week against Philadelphia. Drake London made the catch for the game winner against the Eagles. He looks really good. Kyle Pitts, I need to see a little bit more from him. I think he can be a really good third down red zone target by Kirk. And Bijan Robinson, Lord have mercy, the NFL may be in for a monster with the Atlanta Falcons. By the way, Tyler Algier, really, really good number 2 back. Could be the number 1 on most teams. Atlanta's got a great O-line, really talented offense, a lot of great weapons. I like what Raheem Morris has done with the defensive side of the ball, adding Matthew Judon, who got a sack against Jalen Hurts. Lots to like about this Falcons team. I'm not totally sure if I buy them to go like on a deep playoff run, but it's undeniable what they have in their roster right now. The Falcons are the 8th best team in the National Football League in their same division, and also making their debut for the first time ever on Bryce's Best 10. Welcome, New Orleans Saints. The Saints are the 7th best team in the National Football League, and here's why. So, I mean, it's hard for me not to put a team. Listen, they smoked Carolina. Newsflash. A lot of teams going to do that this year. But to go on the road to Dallas, a team that had won 16 straight regular season home games in a row dating back to 2 seasons ago, to go into their building and absolutely punch them in the throat for 60 minutes straight. Alvin Kamara, 10 touchdowns over the course of the last 2 seasons. He had 4 in this game alone, 4 touchdowns from my man Alvin Kamara. Go Vols. Olave's really talented. That kid Shaheed can freaking fly, offensively. Derek Carr almost had a perfect pass rating against the Cowboys in Arlington. If not for that interception he may have. Listen, this is a very well-coached team on the offensive side of the ball with Gary Kubiak's son. Is it Clint Kubiak? I think is his name. Kubiak. Very, very smart guy from the Shanahan tree. I mean, look, the Saints I think they've scored in their first 10 drives of the season. It's pretty unbelievable what they've done, over the course of this first part of the season. Defensively, to be able to hold CeeDee Lamb in check with no Marshawn Lattimore, I get some of that is that Dallas's receiving core after CD isn't very good, but still very impressed with what they did on the defensive side. Dennis Allen, I still don't buy him as a head coach in the NFL. I do buy him as a defensive mind in this league, and I certainly buy Kubiak as a smart offensive mind. Son of a coach from the Shanahan tree. It works very, very well. They're going to play the Kansas City Chiefs in short order. That'll be a very big kind of litmus test game for them. Big game coming up for them at home against the Eagles. The Saints are the 7th best team in the National Football League. At number 6, a team moving up a few spots from last week, it is the Houston Texans. The Texans are the 6th best team in the National Football League, and here is why. So, very uneven game for the Houston Texans. Listen, defensively, they were unbelievable. After kind of a rough showing against the Indianapolis Colts, Texans were outstanding on the defensive side of the ball against the Chicago Bears. They blitzed early. They blitzed often. Got to Caleb Williams on a consistent basis. They did a good job of kind of holding DJ Moore in check. Offensively, the first part of that game, I'm like, man, Houston could have put up a 30-burger here with Stroud and Nico Collins, bullying guys and bounce off like a bowling pin in the end zone. CJ Stroud making unbelievable plays outside the pocket with his arm, with his legs. Joe Mixon really talented. Stephon Diggs. I would have liked to see a little bit more, and some of this, by the way, may have been that Chicago has a really, really good defense, which I believe they do. I need to see a little bit more of a complete game by Houston. I didn't like that red zone turnover. Had they not, committed that and scored that touchdown to put up 26, maybe I would have had the Texans higher on this list. But there's not much not to like about this team. Great quarterback, great coach, excellent roster, very young roster, very talented team. The Texans are the 6th best team in the National Football League. Moving in the top 5, moving up a spot from last week. At number 5, it is the Buffalo Bills. The Bills are the 5th best team in the National Football League, and here's why. Josh Allen, that's self-explanatory. He is unbelievable with the ball in his hands. Only 1 turnover in the first 2 games of the season, and that's big because we know Josh, from time to time, whether it's mechanics, whether it's just plain bad decision-making, can kind of get out of his element and say, hey, let's try something. And it's like, Josh, what are you doing? Cut that out. He's really good. James Cook is a star in this league. He's not a superstar. We got to see a little bit more from him. Part of the reason I like the Bills above, every team that in that division more than most people is because they found an identity. They found their running game with an excellent young OC in Joe Brady. Offensive line in Buffalo is the best Josh Allen has ever had. And defensively, I mean, listen, they had a great second half against the Cardinals. And in this game, albeit it was the Tua concussion game, but holding a very explosive Dolphins offense to 10 points in Miami. So, listen, this is a Bills team that's got some momentum from the second half and really the last quarter of last season. Love what they bring to the table. Sean McDermott, for all of his faults, does a good job with that defense despite some of the missing, big names that we've seen from them in the last few years. If Buffalo can continue to run the football like this with those really talented tight ends, they run a lot of 12 personnel, Buffalo can make some noise in the AFC. Like, this is Folks may not view this as their best chance to dethrone the Chiefs. I think it may be, just because they finally have a running game. Josh Allen is great, and their defense, I think, can still be really good under Sean McDermott. The Buffalo Bills are the 5th best team in the National Football League. At number 4, dropping one spot from last week, it is the San Francisco 49ers. The Niners are the 4th best team in the National Football League, and here is why. So you'll see a team above San Francisco that also lost over the course of the weekend, but didn't fall. And Niners fans will be like, hey, why did you give us the benefit of the doubt? Well, it's pretty simple. Injuries. Christian McCaffrey on IR, Deebo Samuel out the next couple of weeks. So losing 2, to me, if you take out Trent Williams, the key pieces for this Niners offense to work consistently in Deebo Samuel, who could do everything offensively. And the same can be said about Christian McCaffrey. George Kittle dealt with an injury last week against the Vikings. Hopefully, knock on wood, that's not going to be something that flares up in the future. It's still a really talented roster. I read a report today saying that Talanoa Hufanga, who's one of my favorite players in the NFL, has a chance to come back. That's huge. He's a difference maker on that side of the ball. If he would have been healthy for that Super Bowl against the Chiefs, maybe they win that game in Vegas back in February. It's an ultra-talented roster. Kyle Shanahan, Brock Purdy didn't have a very good day in Minnesota at all. Everybody deserves their bad game. I need to see, I talked about this, if Brock Purdy can continue to ball out without a less than perfect offense, essentially, in terms of skill position guys, hey, then I'm in on Brock. And listen, y'all know I love Kyle Shanahan. Niners offense is still talented. Jordan Mason, that Shanahan West Coast offense, they're still really, really good. That Niners defense, again, everybody deserves a bad day at the office. They got a big game this week against the Los Angeles Rams. The Niners are the 4th best team in the National Football League. Moving up a spot, a team that's starting to gain some traction in the eyes of the national media, but I believed in from the jump. It is the Los Angeles Chargers. The Chargers are the 3rd best team in the National Football League, and here is why. So Justin Herbert, if you look at his numbers, it's like, it's fine. Pass ring's pretty good, but not that many yards. Herbert. But he hasn't had to. Jim Harbaugh, and I predicted this perfectly, would come into this organization and from the jump, because he does this everywhere he goes, institute a winning culture and a punch-you-in-the-mouth culture. He says, I'm going to draft Joe Alt in the 1st round to go along with Rashawn Slater, by far the best tackle duo in the National Football League. I'm going to add J.K. Dobbins, who I'm seeing on some MVP lists right now, 2 games into this year. Listen, the Chargers' defensive numbers are like ridiculous. They've only given up, I believe, I think 16 points. Is it 16 points in the first 2 games of this young season? Listen, we understand that a lot of that is the fact that they played the Carolina Panthers and the Las Vegas Raiders offense. My bad. They've actually only given up 13 points this season. So as they play tougher quarterbacks like a Patrick Mahomes, like some teams down the road, they'll be able to, those defensive numbers won't be quite as impressive. I'm sorry, there's not much I don't love about this team. Talented defense, Derwin James, Bosa, Mack, well coached with Harbaugh, good offensive coordinator Greg Norman, Justin Herbert. By the way, Quentin Johnston. We've been worrying, okay, who's Herbert's number 1 guy? Well, they get Ladd McConkey from Georgia, talented young guy. Quentin Johnston, who I loved out of the draft 2 years ago, but was starting to kind of look like a bust. All of a sudden, again, it's Carolina, so that's got to factor in as well. He looked pretty good. So if Quentin Johnston, with this new coaching staff, this new regime, can step it up with McConkey, with J.K. Dobbins, who's tearing it up the league right now, with those tackles, Herbert, the defense, I'm telling you, this team, I said it from the jump, I strongly believe it, they will play in the AFC Championship game in Arrowhead against the Chiefs. The Chargers are the 3rd best team in the National Football League. At number 2, didn't move a spot. I still believe in them. I've loved this team just like the Chargers pretty much before everybody else did. It is the Detroit Lions. The Lions are the 2nd best team in the National Football League, and here's why. So look, again, Niners fans will say, man, why'd you drop us? Again, injuries. Niners suffer more key injuries than Detroit has. Again, everybody deserves a bad day at the office. First of all, they played a Buccaneers team that's pretty good. They're 10th on my list. Baker Mayfield's been outstanding the first 2 games of this year. But it's the simple fact of this, and we know Detroit's biggest weakness is if Jared Goff does not have time to throw the football, if he's facing pressure, he's a below-average quarterback. When he's not facing pressure with the best offensive line in the league, in my estimation, he's deadly. Okay, you've got Amon-Ra St. Brown, who is practicing this week. Looks like he's going to be ready to go. Jamison Williams, Montgomery, and Jahmyr Gibbs, and Laporta, who, again, I still believe this, Laporta at the end of the season will be regarded as the best tight end in the NFL, even over Kelsey and Kittle. And Detroit's defense, I mean, look, they held a Rams team that did, for a time, have a healthy Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp to 20. Then they held, a Tampa Bay offense who's got some really talented pieces to 20. If Detroit can be an above-average offense, which I believe they'll be because Aiden Hutchinson is a monster, and they address that defense a lot in the draft and in free agency. If they can shore that unit up, my biggest one for the Detroit Lions is, hey, can they score points? I think they'll be fine. The Detroit Lions are the second best team in the National Football League. Again, third straight week, anticlimactic. At number 1, it is the Kansas City Chiefs. The Chiefs are the best team in the National Football League, and here is why. So, in a game against Cincinnati, who I have at number 9 in this list, I think the Bengals are going to be really, really good. Yes, you're at home, but you're playing a Bengals team in which you commit not 1, not 2, but 3 turnovers. In a game where Patrick Mahomes, 151 passing yards, that's the lowest he's ever thrown for in a game that he played from start to finish. In a game where Travis Kelce, folks, had a single catch for 5 yards. In a game in which Joe Burrow, with no name guys outside of Jamar Chase, was playing really well, was cashing in the red zone against his Kansas City defense. All of those things combined, the fact that the Chiefs had a penalty, contrary to popular belief, that obvious calls actually go against the Chiefs, just like they go for the Chiefs, believe it or not, on a 4th down and 6, it doesn't matter because they got the best quarterback in the world, best coach in the world. They're amazing situationally, and to cap it off, to win the game, they got the best clutch kicker in the NFL in Harrison Butker. This defense is still unbelievable with Chris Jones, with McDuffie, with those young talented DBs, Carl Optis. I mean, they got some really, really talented guys on that defense. I think it's pretty obvious. The Kansas City Chiefs are the best team in the National Football League. Let's go up and show up this little chart here, just to show 1 to 10. So from 10 to 1, I've got the Buccaneers, Bengals, Falcons, Saints, Texans, Bills, 49ers, Chargers, Lions, and at number 1, again, we're reigning back-to-back champion, Kansas City Chiefs. See what we got. Grady's got a question, go back to the Carolina thing. Bryson, here's another thing. When we fired Ron Rivera back in 2019, why are you going to fire the best coach in franchise history in the middle of the season? Doesn't even have the decency to let him finish the year. You're 100% right in that, Grady. I forgot about that. But yeah, middle of 2019, Carolina wasn't playing very well. And Ron Rivera, who had, I think, is he the winningest head coach in Panthers history? I think he is, over John Fox. Didn't let him finish the season. I mean, he got you to a Super Bowl. 3 straight playoff appearances from 2013 to 15, 4 out of 5 years if you extend it to 2017. It is, it's pretty excusable on the part of David Tepper and the Panthers, but that's kind of what they do. By the way, I meant to include this and I forgot. On Bryson's best 10 when I was talking about the Chargers. And, there's not much I don't love about this team. Is that with Jim Harbaugh? Did y'all see the quote from Jim Harbaugh today? Like, it's so good, okay? He's talking about his assistant coaches and how much he believes in them. And this line, this is a Kendrick Lamar. This is a Jay-Z line, actually. I feel like Jay-Z should have written this. Jim Harbaugh talking about his coaching staff. And I quote, "Like Moses, I'm going to die leaning on my staff." End quote. How could you not love this guy? I mean, he is, listen, I know he rubs people the wrong way, and everybody don't love Jim Harbaugh. I get it. But again, you can't deny the results. He wins at college, NFL, it doesn't matter. He wins everywhere that he goes, and he wins everywhere he goes immediately. I love Jim Harbaugh. Love the guy. If I were an NFL player and 5'7", $150, that's probably, well, 5'7", 3/4, and $150, that's probably not my future. But if I were, coaches I want to play for go as follows. If I had to think of 5, okay? 4 off the top of my head I can definitely name. No order. Mike Tomlin, Dan Campbell, Andy Reid, Jim Harbaugh. Those are the 4. That's the Mount Rushmore. Who'd be the 5th? I'm trying to think of teams in the league. Players seem to really like D'Amico Ryans. That'd be good. Shanahan. If I were an offensive player, Shanahan would be a godsend. Probably McVay. I think McVay would be the number 5 spot. Either McVay or D'Amico Ryans. I go back and forth on those, but the Mount Rushmore, coaches I would love to play for if I were an NFL player: Tomlin, Reid, Jim Harbaugh, and Dan Campbell. NBC. He says, I like Vrabel in Philly. The fans wouldn't bother him. Well, they'd be dumb to bother him. Mike Vrabel is the last coach. Okay, let's do a tiers list or a power rankings of coaches you'd least want to fight. Mike Vrabel, Dan Campbell, and probably D'Amico, number 1, 2, and 3. Like, those are the top 3. Like, you do not screw with those guys. Yeah, listen, look, Vrabel probably the top of the list, bro. I ain't screwing Mike Vrabel. I am not screwing with Vrabel. Heck no. That guy's got some edge to him. No way. That's why his players love him, though, in Tennessee, and it's why it was idiotic to fire him. I don't know. Maybe they wanted a change of scenery for Will Levis. Problem wasn't Vrabel, guys. It was Levis. Levis is not a very good player. That goes without saying. All right. Let's move to our last segment of the night. Got a really interesting matchup. Amazon seems to really like these AFC East divisional matchups because they had the Bills and the Dolphins last week, and now tonight, or tomorrow night rather, they've got the New England Patriots and the New York Jets. Let's go ahead and predict that one. So, looking at the line right now, make sure it hasn't moved a ton since I last checked. Nope. The Jets are at home. It's their home opener in this game, the first home game that Aaron Rodgers will play. We might as well not even count that first game last year against the Bills when he blew his Achilles 4 plays into his New York Jets tenure. Jets are pretty big touchdown favorites, -6 here at home. Both teams come to this matchup at 1-1. So here's what I'm looking at right now with the New York Jets. So Aaron Rodgers in the fourth quarter of that game against the Tennessee Titans, pretty darn good. Threw some beautiful balls to Garrett Wilson. The Jets' running game was solid. Breece Hall, we understand that. But the thing that I've said from the jump and why I do not believe in the Jets 1 iota, okay? Number 1, old quarterback, 40 going on 41. Off an Achilles injury. Has not been good in 3 years. Has not won a playoff game in 4. That's number 1. Number 2, Nathaniel Hackett, look at his history going back to Buffalo, Jacksonville, Denver, now with the Jets, is the single worst offensive coordinator in professional football. That's number 2. Number 3, folks, I keep trying to tell y'all, this Jets defense is really good. It's certainly above average. They're not like top 5. They're not the Steelers. They're not San Francisco. Thus far, they're darn sure not the Chargers. Here's what what the New York Jets are defensively. It's why I think it could actually play in the New England Patriots' favor. The Jets defense. Do we have the numbers here? I believe we do. Okay, New York Jets. Folks, here's what they are. 27th in points allowed. 25th in yards allowed. 18th in pass yards allowed. This is a big one. 26th in rush yards allowed. I'm going to stop right there. The New England Patriots are 5th in the NFL in running the football. The Jets are 26th at stopping the run. Here's what I think is going to happen. I don't want to see it. If you're a Patriots fan, you don't want to see a ton of Jacoby Brissett. You want to see them play, again, classic game manager. Mistake-free football. Don't put the ball in. Don't do what Will Levis did to the point where his coach was like cussing him out on the sideline. Don't throw the ball to Jets standing right there. Don't fumble in key situations. Jacoby isn't going to do that. He's a smart veteran player in this league. He's not going to do that. I still have questions about this Patriots roster. The Jets certainly have better talent than the Patriots do. I think Jerome Mayo is a better coach today than Robert Saleh. I've yet to see Robert Saleh. Well, he's had bad quarterbacks. So is Tomlin, and so is Kevin Stefanski, and they've got multiple playoff appearances in the last few seasons. So the bad quarterback play does not apply here. I think this is going to be a classic ball control game. I can see the Patriots control the ball for 35, 36, 37 minutes, keeping the ball out of the hands of Aaron Rodgers. And by the way, if the ball is to go to Aaron Rodgers, we got the good defensive players. We've got Christian Gonzalez. We've got Kyle Duggar. We got some guys who could be able to make an impact and make things tough on Aaron Rodgers. If the Titans could do it, if the Niners could do it, who says that the Patriots, with Jerome Mayo, a defensive coach and a defensive culture, can't do the same thing? So, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, give me the Patriots. 22-19. This does not technically count as upset of the week, although I may go ahead and count it for upset of the week. New England wins this one. Take the Patriots and the points and take them and the money line. 22-19 over the Jets. This is a ball control game. Keep it out of the hands of that Jets offense. And even when the Jets offense has the football, folks, they got a bag offensive coordinator who delivers a disastrous first 15 plays, an old quarterback who's a little jittery with a pass rush, by the way, with limited weapons, and a defense that has gotten run all over the first 2 games of this year. That's what the Patriots specialize in with Ramondre Stevenson. Give me the Patriots in an upset. 22-19 over the New York Jets. I have certainly in the last 48 hours, not been a whole lot of equity with Jets fans. They've been getting on me for that Jets segment last week, but same time, look, got call like I see it. Coaching staff isn't very good. Receiving core outside of Garrett Wilson is below average. Breece Hall has an injury history. Rodgers hasn't been good in 3 years. I mean, he hasn't thrown for 300 yards since week 14, 2021. In his last healthy season, his stats were below average in the NFL. Pass yards, passer rating, completion, all that. So there you go. All right. That is all the time we have for today's show. Appreciate everybody stopping by as always. Be sure to catch Carving It Up live on Friday at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific time, right here on Facebook, as well as the Carving It Up YouTube channel and the Grid Network YouTube channel. And be sure to like, share, comment, and please take 2 seconds out of your day. Hit that big red subscribe button down there. It helps the channel grow exponentially. We are on the road. The next goal, the next mark is to get to 5,000 subscribers. We got to 1,000 earlier this year. I can't tell you how much I appreciate it from everybody. Let's get to that 5,000 subscriber total. If you haven't subscribed, just takes a couple seconds. Hit the subscribe button down there, and boom, you're part of the Carving It Up family. And it's a supportive group. A lot of great people do it. I don't mean to sound like a certain somebody running for president. I feel like I just did there. The point is, great support group, support system with this show means everything to me, everything to everybody who's associated with Carving Up Live. If you have subscribed, please tell your friends about it, your family about it, everybody you know about Carving Up Live, except for your sleeping cat, except for him or her. I hear they're coming to eat him. Nah, just listen. Nealon's chilling. He's all good. He's enjoying this fall, this autumn style weather. It's getting a little chilly here in Tennessee. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not quite ready for the drop in temperature just quite yet. We're still in September. Let's wait till October to get to that. It's Mother Nature. Hold it off for the next couple weeks. Just as importantly, be sure to go subscribe to the Grid Network. That is GRYD, the Grid Podcast Network, right here on YouTube, as well as any and everywhere that you get your favorite podcasts, be it Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts. Sorry, that doesn't exist anymore. Any and everywhere that you get your favorite podcasts, you can find us at the Grid Network, and be sure to check out all of our incredible content creators. Check out my man, Patrick Brown. You saw his comment, if you're on YouTube right now, his comment at the top there at the start of the show, writing some great killer articles for the Grid's website. Be sure to check his stuff out. Great stuff in the network. Shout out to Patrick. Shout out to everybody involved with the Grid. We got some big new stuff coming y'all's way, so you got to stay tuned for that. Go and subscribe. Get out ahead of it. All right, get out ahead of it and what's going to happen over the next few weeks or so at the Grid Network. So we will see you on Friday. Reaction to Jets Patriots. Vol View. It's going to be a lively Vol View because there's a lot going on with Tennessee football right now. I cannot wait for that. Be sure to check out all of our stuff on Carving It Up on the Grid. NFL predictions on Friday, 6 Eastern, 3 Pacific time. Tune in. Cannot wait to see y'all there. All right. Please be sure to stay safe out there. Please be sure to take care of your physical as well as your mental health. And please be sure to contact your local state representatives and senators to demand change for gun violence in America. Doesn't matter where you lean, right, left, center. This is an issue that affects every single one of us on a day-to-day basis. And no matter what anybody tries to tell you, it's not a problem. There's only one solution to the problem. Both are BS. Both are not true. It's a huge problem that deserves and requires a number of nuanced solutions to it. And this being an election year, if anybody on either side doesn't show any sort of sense of urgency to address this issue, either vote their butt out of office or vote against them in this upcoming election this November, because we have got to get this solved and save a lot of our lives here in this beautiful country. All right. I'll see you on Friday. A lot of football coming up. This is the greatest time of year for a sports fan. See you then. God bless y'all. Peace out. I mean, seriously, what were you doing, Philly? What were you doing at the end there? Thanks so much for watching the show on YouTube, and be sure to go click that big red subscribe button and check out the other clips and full shows from Carving It Up Live, as well as our other incredible content creators here on the Grid Network.